Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Negotiation. I am your host, Todd Embley, and today we welcome Yaling Jiang. Yaling is the founder of the Following the Yuan newsletter, which provides excellent analysis on Chinese consumer and lifestyle trends. An experienced journalist, Yaling previously wrote for SCMP or South China Morning Post, CNN, Vogue Business, and Jing Daily. Yaling, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks for having me.
So, if you don't mind, please give us a deeper introduction into yourself, some of your background, upbringing, education, and work experience that has led to what you do today.
hmm I'm a Chinese. I'm a China native. I'm a millennial born and bred in Suzhou, which is part of Jiangsu province, very close to Shanghai. I was educated in the UK and US, but in between those years, I was also working in Shanghai as a translator and a freelance writer. So my previous background was really a connector between the English-speaking world and China market. And I don't see the work I do anything different. I think I'm still very much a connector between the China consumer markets and the English-speaking audience. And I really strive to bring them the day-to-day nuances and on-the-ground colors for people who may have investment interest or just any interest in China.
Okay, so I think we're both producing content and information and education along the same vein to a similar audience, and for the same reasons. We both want to see each side understand each better and be better informed and better educated in
Mm-hmm.
order to promote better business, and sometimes just a better life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us the story behind your newsletter, Following the Yuan, and the inspiration behind it.
Right. Well, as you know, Todd, I think with the startup world, a lot of founders start their own business or product with frustration. And I think I have a similar story because I've been very frustrated with how consumers were reported in the English journalism world. I think actually one of the triggers for me to start my own thing is that I didn't get a job I wanted. There was a very relevant job with the exact title I want to report on Chinese consumers. I didn't get a job. I was very sad. And also over the years, when I was striving to work for bigger and bigger newspapers and platforms, I realized that the newsrooms don't always prioritize people stories. They don't prioritize the consumer stories in the business world. Instead, they go for the click, I won't say clickbait, but it's a bit
Mm-hmm.
like that because they do realize that the political charged news often get bigger hits. For example, like how some political moves by Biden would affect certain Chinese companies, or how the AI war, trade war, rolls out between China and US or China and the rest of the world. Those stories these days would get bigger hits than a general trend story. Actually, some of the editors wouldn't even see trend stories as real news. So that really frustrated me because I also had some years of experience working at a design consultancy, and I know that these trends are actually what top management would love to read because they need to make forward-looking business decisions based on the consumers. They are actually very user-driven. They are very consumer-driven. So I was just thinking when I'm at newsrooms that you're actually not feeding the trends, the market insights that these business leaders need. But I want to do something on my own here to tell them what's really happening in China. That's actually beyond the top headlines of large news publications.
Okay. So, what does Following the Yuan cover? Tell us a little bit more about the topics and insights
Hmm.
from your newsletter.
I um, I think the regular schedule for me every week now is to do a news roundup on Tuesday and also deeper analysis on Thursday. So for news roundup, I normally would just get like three top trend stories I've read from Chinese publications and give them like where these trends come from, where they may want to go. Because I know that I think sometimes it's really hard to read beyond the surface. For example, you may have seen some fashion reporting saying that a lot of Chinese Gen Z girls like to dress as ABG girls because they just kind of copy the aesthetics from the US, but they don't really understand the cultural context behind it. So what I'm bringing to the table is the cultural context, why the trends may come to be what they are. Sometimes it's culture, sometimes it's societal movement, sometimes it's policy, and I love to give the audience the whole package. And with the deeper dives, sometimes I do original reporting too. I talk to consumers on how the market is shifting, for example, whether the nightlife is really bouncing back. Sometimes that answers the questions that maybe publications have never answered before, such as like what does the cancel culture mean in China? Because there is a lot of differences and the nuances that some media publication didn't really tap into. So I try to answer those questions. I try to be explanatory. I wouldn't say what I'm doing is 100% journalism. I think a lot of it is commentary, a lot of it is analysis. But all in all, I want to present them with like a whole rounded view, with a lot of color, in a way that they can understand.
Right. And I like that because so often we get the headlines and they're typically written in a clickbaity form and they're announcing what has happened and they might give some light information about the who and the where to go along with it, but we lack a lot of context. And I think it's unfortunate. I know that it takes work to dig out the context and present it. It takes work for the audience to read and understand it, but that's where the importance actually lies. You can be told the answer to a question, but for anybody who's taken some, statistics in university and been asked a question, and then it says that only 1 mark out of 10 is given for the right answer, 9 are in how you got there. It underscores the importance of really how important it is to actually understand how something came to be. So I appreciate that you do that. You touched on a couple of things that I want to get some clarification on for our audience. One was the ABG. Can you explain what an ABG is? Asia Baby Girl.
Right.
Can you explain what that is?
I'm no expert in US culture, but I know that it carries certain perceptions in the US. And I think the aesthetics was translated to Chinese social media probably and was picked up by Chinese girls, but what they don't get, and they probably don't really care, is how the ABG girls are perceived, and they are probably looked down among the Asian community, and also maybe some people may see it as a phase in US. I don't know, correct me here because I'm really no US culture expert. But I think going back to what we talked about before, it's really important to explain the context and where the trends come from, so that the audience can actually learn a thing or two about how to read trend later. We don't just want to present them like whatever it is on the surface. It would be better if they can be more than the expert themselves later on, or like in a Chinese slang, we can teach them how to fish instead of like hand holding them every step of the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, I can't explain ABG perfectly.
That's okay. But everybody now knows that ABG stands for Asia Baby Girl. And you know what? Everybody has access to Google, so they can go look it up if they're interested. You used a very famous quip something that I used to use a lot when I was working with startups, and I would say, we're not going to give you the fish, and
Yeah.
we're not going to teach you how to fish. I'm here to teach you how to build a fishing company. So kudos
Oh,
to you for
wow.
dropping that in. There was one other thing you mentioned, which was about cancel culture and the difference between what that might mean in China or in Asia versus that in Western culture. I would love to have you talk a little bit more about that, what cancel culture means, represents, and defines itself to be in your area of the world.
Right. So I think we're all pretty familiar with cancel culture now in North America, in the English-speaking world. I think one major distinction is that the cancel culture in the West is usually driven just by market forces. It's driven by people online, publications, writers everywhere, TikTokers these days. But in China, the distinction stands at the fact that decision makers are not only consumers, they're also state media, they're also the government. And what usually happens is that if the government didn't like really call the cancellation on you, you're not really canceled. Which brings us to a recent incident of a Prada ambassador, Cai Shikun. I think he got into a scandal because he, according to rumors, was forcing a girl that he had one night stand with to get an abortion. That really stirred up a lot of comments on social media first. So people were calling for him to get canceled. People were calling for the brands like Prada and other really, really big brands to give a public response, but the brand stayed quiet. And the state media kind of like swings from left to right here because on one day they'll be like, people like Cai Shikun should get punishment. On another day, I think they will also stay quiet. And at the end of the day, I think the whole thing was brewing for 2 or 3 weeks. And I think Cai Shikun is still okay because he didn't get a final chop from the government. But what happened before is that sometimes celebrities like this would be like first be the talk of town because of a personal scandal, but then the government would look into them. Maybe they find some other reasons to punish the celebrities, like tax evasion. So they will be punished based on that, and then they will be truly canceled. And no entertainment venues, no TV stations will want to work with them. But Cai Shikun, I'm not sure. So that's really interesting to watch.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for taking that on. I wanted to ask, because you provide newsletter based journalism, can you tell us a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about the broader trend and industry of doing newsletter based journalism? What are your thoughts on it? What do you like and appreciate about doing that? And then maybe what's difficult or more, face more headwinds when you're doing newsletter based journalism?
Hmm. Right. I maybe I want to talk about the difficulty first. Well, actually, let me go back to the beginning where I first interacted with newsletter journalism. I think back in 2018, I was still in New York City, and one of my best friends at the time started working for Morning Brews, and now I mean the business newsletter that everyone knows and likes. I so that was actually my first interaction with someone who's actually in the business, and now that it's become so much more mainstream. And I think for the morning brew people, they still wouldn't say that they're doing journalism. They're basically doing digestible business content that sometimes I think that just makes the headlines or makes the traditional forms of journalism easier to read, easier to digest, and entertaining even. So I think for the last 5 years, I've really learned a lot from them. And as the trend goes more mainstream, I've now also joined the wave. around 1 or 2 years ago. I think there's still a very bright future in it. As we can see, like the news veterans like Ben Smith also started Semaphore, which is also newsletter based. I think people see the newsletter a very key way to stay connected with the audience, a bit like how China marketers see WeChat official accounts a key form of communication channel with their audience. And for me, as someone who both lived in China and the US, I think actually newsletters are a lot like WeChat official accounts. You are basically in the person's echo chamber. You are in their like inner circle of information channel, and you basically have like one-to-one you have a one-to-one communication channel with them. So if that person wants to respond to you either on WeChat or newsletter, they can do that, and they can feel the level of personal connection with you, which is definitely not how traditional journalism or traditional newspaper or websites are set up.
That's true. That's true. Thank you. You recently wrote on 3 cultural trends that are similar in China and the US.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what those 3 are and break that down for me, please.
Wow. Yes. I I mean, I've always thought China US are pretty similar socially and work-wise because we both work really hard. I don't know, Todd, are you from Canada?
I am.
Okay, sorry to exclude you there. But just because I haven't been to Canada, maybe China. I mean, I think Canadian people work really hard too. So I mean, I've lived in those 2 places. That's where my anecdotal facts are based.
Yeah.
So I think based on that, I really want to like draw the parallels here, because maybe some English readers only read U.S. news, some Chinese people only read the Chinese news, but maybe what they cannot see is that how many similarities we have. So one of the bigger trend I'm sure that many people will know once I point out is the quiet quitting trend in the US and the lie flat, let it rot trend in China. Um, I think it actually started in China first with the anti-996 movement. For those of you who are not familiar, anti-996 movement is something that started in the tech sector. Todd, you may be like very familiar with this. People are disobeying the unspoken rules set by big tech companies. They don't want to work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, or even sometimes even longer hours. Instead, they do want to achieve a work-life balance, and I think so. So in terms of language, in terms of their aspirations, they want to express the fact that they want to chill or just take it easy. They still want to work hard. So I think that's kind of what lie flat means. It doesn't mean that people are actually lying flat. It's just an inspiration
Yeah.
because they still have bills to pay. And with quiet quitting, I think maybe you can explain to the audience better.
Quiet
I'll
quitting.
challenge you
Unhappy in
there.
the job, but find it
Hmm.
difficult to move or unwilling to move.
Mm.
And they're not working as hard or as diligently as they their bosses or their company would want them to. They're mailing it in, as we say, but sticking around and taking the paycheck almost in a bit of a flipping the bird, as we say, to the company, in that I'm going to stay here, but until you treat me properly or treat me well or pay me well or what have you, I'm going to take my paycheck, but I'm not really going to do my work. And quiet quitting can involve the time spent whilst looking for other
Mm.
work or so on. But however they spend their time, it's not really working, but they're taking the money.
Right. How do you feel about that as an investor?
I don't think that I ever really had to worry about that too much, especially
Mm-hmm.
the way that we invested at such an early stage. It There was nothing really that the money always went into the company, and we always monitored to make sure that the money was being used for company growth purposes. We would identify pretty quickly. I've had random instances where the company we invested in took all the money and bought all new computers for the whole staff and almost blew the whole dang thing that we gave them, which was an unnecessary spend, in my opinion, and probably in most people's opinions. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that when you're an entrepreneur, you can't quiet quit because you're quitting on yourself.
Mm. Yeah, it doesn't exist in the startup world. It doesn't
No,
exist in
not so
my
much.
belief. Right, but good for them. I think I'm always a big supporter of workers' rights, and if they feel like they're doing so and the company can afford it, I say that, yeah, go ahead, get more leverage. But let's move on to the next trend. I'm going to talk about food in economic downturn and also post-COVID. So the trend I see in the US is a comeback of buffet, and the trend I see in China is specialized buffets and community canteens. So I think people know, yeah, people know about buffet, but what about community canteens? It's usually set up by the government to support senior citizens. So it's government subsidized, and they offer a wide range of nutritious meals to senior citizens, and they usually come at a very cheap price, cheap and affordable. So I think in recent years, the young people found out that they can tap into this, um, advantage that was
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be for senior citizens. So they're boasting about it on social media. They're taking videos saying how much money they're saving. And I also went the other day with a Gen Z friend to a community canteen, and it was a pretty good experience. We paid 28 kwai, which is about the same as a Starbucks coffee, to get a full meal. It was really good. And what's interesting is that it's not just in China and US. Another day, a reader commented that it's also observed in Hong Kong. They have something called 两餸饭. I know I'm not pronouncing it right, but basically it's like two pre-made, two dishes with a portion of rice. And it's usually seen as something that only blue collar workers or low salaried people would get. So it has a very low social perception attached to it. But these days, I think the younger workers or white collar workers don't really care. They would rather
Mm-hmm.
save money than save face. So they would also get 两餸饭 or 三餸饭, which means like three dishes and a rice if they want to splurge. Yeah. Has
That's
has
great.
buffet made a comeback in Canada?
Um, I think it's a difficult. It. I haven't seen it come back in force.
Hmm.
Now, there's always the Chinese buffet. I love the Chinese buffet. My son loves the China. I mean, we miss the food in China, so we eat a lot of, but albeit North American Chinese, which is very different. People in North America may not realize that chow mein actually isn't a real thing in China. It's a North American 100%
Mm.
creation. There's obviously knots of noodles and whatnot, but not in the way. I mean, yes, there's Shanghai noodles and things, but the classic chow mein, no, that I never found that when I was in China ever. But there's the move to health that is typically
Mm.
sweeping a lot of the planet. I know it's a big movement in China as well. With people getting more into exercise and more into outdoors and sports and camping and other things. Those are all on the rise and doing very healthy in those sectors. And I think in Canada, the thing that I noticed in North
Mm.
America was a buffet. You might as well replace that with all you can eat for one price, and you
Yeah.
could you'd starve yourself all day just for that buffet, and then you would just try to eat as much as you can and put a bunch of egg rolls in your pocket before you leave. Now, that has a negative connotation to it as well. And that would
Mm,
not be a healthy way to eat. And I think it's in North America not been the highest quality of food because you have to offer it at a very low price. Ergo, there's no business model in the world that says you can get great food for an all you can eat and still, keep the price down. That's not going to work. So there's a bit of
mm-hmm,
a battle there. I'd like to see it come back to me, and the canteens that you were talking about. From what I remember, it wasn't as much an all you can eat, but it was just many
mm.
choices. So you had a lot of options. You could go back every day and mix and match from 20-25 different food items and change it up every day, but at the same place. Am I right or wrong with that?
No, I think they have different business models too. They have different offerings. Some of them are buffet style. Some of them are like pick where you choose sort of thing.
Mm, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
and
I
being in
think about.
China, yeah,
Go ahead.
right. I was gonna add, being in China, it's also kind of obvious that maybe some business owners are just using the name to lure the target audience they want. They're probably not government backed. They're just calling themselves community
Mm,
campaign now because now it's hot.
yeah. Um, and
Yeah,
I'm surprised they'd be able to get away with that. Now,
yeah.
talking about unhealthy perceptions, let's talk about the Barbie film. Uh, Tell us about how the Barbie
Have you seen
film
it?
has been. I haven't. I haven't. It's really hard not to
Hmm.
know. I mean, it's been one of the biggest box office weeks with what is it, Oppenheimer and
Hmm.
Barbie. Am I getting that right? Oppenheim. Um, those two movies are
Barbenheimer. Oh yes,
Oppenheimer. Yeah.
yes. Sorry.
And it's been dominating the airwaves, right? It's eating all the oxygen in the
Mm.
room on social media a lot. It's been a lot of fun for a lot of people getting dressed up and doing a lot of things. It's been somewhat fascinating to watch what's going on from the sidelines. Um, I always felt that Barbie wasn't exactly well perceived, especially in the realm of body image and these kinds of things. It was really rather looked down upon in a lot of ways. And then all of a sudden, this movie comes out and it's unbelievable. I think Margot Robbie, is she the lead actress in that movie? Yeah, so I think that has a lot to
Mhm.
do with it.
Mhm.
But again, here we go. It's huge. It's been everywhere. And I'd like to know from you, how has it been received at the Chinese box office, and what are Chinese moviegoers saying about it over there?
Hmm. I actually wrote about it for my newsletter yesterday. I looked at the dashboard on Maoyan, which is Alibaba-owned film intelligence platform, and they are ranked the fourth in the national box office. And I think the actual number is something close to, sorry, I'm trying to spell numbers, to 1亿, 1亿, that's like 100 million. That's 100 million
Okay.
yuan.
Yeah. Wow.
It's close to that. So it's ranked the fourth, and top three are all domestic titles. The first two are based on traditional fantasies, and the third one is based on the news story. But I think it's understandable because it's a foreign title, and these days, like Chinese cinemas don't give a lot of scheduling slots to foreign titles. Maybe partially it's because of I think the government pressure, and also the cinema managers would think that, oh, they don't they're not received as well as say 2016. So it's also based on their perception of how well the movie is going to receive. So I looked into the scheduling rate, which usually means that I think of 100 movies screened in cinema in China, how many slots does this one take? So for Barbie, it's around 10%, but for the top grossing movie in China as of yesterday, it's 22%. So I
Okay.
think people should look at scheduling rates when they look at a certain the box office of a certain film title.
Interesting. Okay, and what are the moviegoers who have seen the movie? What are they saying about it? What do they think?
Okay, let me tell you what I think first. I went to cinema last
Thank you.
weekend in my only pink dress. I think it was great. I think it was great branded content. I think really, I think hopefully it will change the perception of Mattel to everyone who went there and to see it. I think it's really funny that I mean how the screenwriters and how the directors think they can actually joke about Mattel themselves. There was one thing which I think was great that there was like this Barbie world and the real world. The real world is basically set in LA. And in the Barbie world, every woman or every Barbie thinks they've already changed the world because in their world, like women can be president, they can be supreme judge, they can be lawyers, and it's a place ruled by women. So in their mind, they've already changed the world to a better place, which is funny, I think, which is kind of like it's a clever joke made of like based on the inclusivity, diversity, ESG movement, DEI efforts made by these companies. But they know that once they step into the real world, it's still very patriarchal, as we see in the film. So I think it's very cleverly done. I really enjoyed it. And the female friends I've had, I think enjoyed it too. Based on some comments I see on social media, there were some feminists who are saying that Barbie is not feminist enough, but they are understanding because they kind of have to strike a balance between the real feminism and the business achievement. And for a mass audience to accept something like Barbie, you can't go too far. So yeah, I think Chinese women are loving it, and they are pushing their boyfriends and husbands to see it, kind of just to give them a test to see how they would respond. I don't know. I don't think I've seen many men in the same movie theater. I think there were a lot of gay guys, there were a lot of girlfriends going there in groups. I don't think I've seen many guys. I do hope like more guys will go see it though.
Yeah, it's a celebration of pink in a way, which I think may just from the color throw guys off from going. But I think that it's very interesting because to me, Barbie and Ken are about as American as backyard barbecues and baseball. It's always been that way. It's used and it's referenced. She looks like a Barbie or something like this or what have you. And it's almost as if for the last 40 years, the rest of the world has looked upon a blonde-haired girl from LA as a Barbie or referenced as a Barbie. It's used in this way, and it almost always refers to an American. So, how does Barbie, the movie, or the aura fit into Chinese culture or Chinese environment? How does it play in China? Because versus how it plays in the US, because it's adopted, it's there. The kids, mostly girls, grew up playing with Barbie, and it's got all this symbolism and this emotional attachment for so many people in North America. Does it have that? What's it represent? How does it fit into Chinese culture, if at all?
I don't think it fits at all. Before the movie, after the movie, who knows? Maybe the company can do something else. If you were in China maybe like 10 something years ago, you may remember there was a huge house of Barbie in the city center of Shanghai. That was an expensive experiment by Mattel because they thought
Yeah.
that, oh, we are so popular here, we can be popular in China. Let's just throw like 30 million to this six-story building that can bring so much joy to the Chinese girls. The thing is that the Chinese girls don't want Barbie in their world. They don't need Barbie. Also, like they don't identify with Barbie. Also, Mattel at the time tried to come up with this Chinese Barbie called Ling, who's in a pink qipao. But I think the reception at the time, as I read from domestic media, is that they don't think it really, I mean, it doesn't identify with really like with a lot of Chinese girls. It's still the American perception of Chinese girls. So I think back at the time, if they did more consumer interviews, if they really talk to the consumers, they will know that it's not a great idea. But in 2023, I think a pop-up can actually be a brilliant idea. But the thing is, maybe they've lost interest in China already. What I've seen this year, though, I think since last year and maybe this year, that there has been a lot of Barbie collaborations with Chinese brands. For example, there was a really cool uh, collaboration with Chinese pastry brand Hollyland, Holly Lai. They
Mm.
just make kind of, yeah, like all over the moon pastries with excessive packaging. For example, I give friend this cake in a high glass, and there's also packaging that makes it look like a handbag, so she can carry it on the street and feels fancy, and also in a funny kind of way because people don't really see Barbie as as fancy anymore. We see it as excessive
Hmm.
and fancy. Yeah, and yeah, it's sort of more embraced by the LGBTQ world.
Yeah. Let me ask a more boiled down question then on that.
Hmm.
Do do girls growing up in China play with dolls or even stuffed animals? Or like over here, it's all about the squishmallows. And I don't even know if that's become a thing in China or not, but it's my daughter's all about it, or at least was for a
Hmm.
very long time. And she, she had a dollhouse. She played a lot with stuffed animals. She's got dozens, and they all have names. And she would put them all to bed, and then before she went to bed, and she was she enjoyed that stuff. But I'm thinking back, I don't ever remember seeing that be a part of the culture in China. So I guess the basic question is, do girls in China, when growing up, play with
Hmm.
dolls?
I think these days I do, but I maybe it would be better if I start with my own experience. I grew up in the 90s. I grew up playing with fake Legos and maybe fake Barbies. Maybe they were just not even seen as Barbies. It's just like a doll and
Mm-hmm.
some Lego
Yeah.
toys. Actually, I didn't get my first stuff like real Disney stuffed animals until middle school or high school, which is like in early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
But I think after early 2000s, since there were a lot of like IP rights being protected, hopefully, and people are like the millennial parents are more aware of this sort of thing, so they will tend to get the toys from the real deal.
Yeah. It almost gets me going down a path of thinking about what do children uh, what kind of toys do children typically have when growing up with China? And it's not that I even need the answer to it. It's just I think,
Mm,
North America consumes like nobody else. And although China is catching up quickly,
mm,
the amount of toys kids have in North America, it's crazy. Like this is where the toy box and the toy closet and the toys strewn all over, and the parents always all over the kids to clean up their room and clean up their toys. And we have a saying here that there's pain, there's extreme pain, and then there's stepping on a piece of Lego. And it's all referenced back to the amount of toys. I just don't know that, again, I haven't seen a lot of excessive toys in the households that have children.
Right. Yeah, I have a thought there. I think the favorite toy of Chinese children in this era is just their phone, their parents' phone. And lots of times when I go out for family dinners, I would see the kids of my relatives just be on their phone, like maybe watching a cartoon without earplugs, which is very annoying. But yeah, maybe their ears are too small for earplugs. Or they actually would go on Douyin, which is sister app of TikTok, and they would like scroll down these content videos. And sometimes, like I remember this one relative would complain that like sometimes like the kid would just click or just say that they want certain toy that was being promoted on Douyin. So yeah, I can also see China going down this. Um, I think the Chinese kids will go down this rabbit hole without even realizing they're sucked into the consumer culture because they're on their phone all the time since a very young age, or maybe iPad
Interesting.
watching cartoons.
The great thing about great toys is that they promote imagination and they
Mm-hmm.
creativity and play. You have to fully come up with the entire environment, the dialogue, the situation, and I've seen my kids, especially my daughter, just hours and hours of just absorbed in her own world and her own fantasy that she has completely created. And that's my favorite thing about toys because I love what it does for the way their brains grow. I want to switch from toys to health and wellness because it has been one of the dominant
Yeah.
lifestyle trends that WPIC has been observing. How is that impacting
Mm.
consumption trends, and what are people buying with this increased focus on health and wellness?
Right. I think to answer your question, we need to look at where the trends come from and what some of the factors behind the rising awareness. I think the first one is policy. Because over the last decade, Beijing has been pushing the sports industry to grow and to develop, and we've seen measures in 12th and 13th five-year plan. We are currently in the 14th five-year plan, which is this big economic guideline set by the central government. And there was a stat that says in 2019, the market should add 1 trillion yuan um, compared with maybe a few years back in 2016. And just in 2021, the cabinet level state council has set a new target for the sports market in the national fitness plan. That is by 2025, the whole country's sports market will reach 5 trillion yuan. So when the highest level of government set a goal, I think all the investment companies and big corporations will see this as a very, very bullish thing to do. They will think that this is a new sector to invest, and also the shareholders will be very encouraged to buy these company stocks. Um, and I think another thing I want to talk about is the consumer level awareness. I think just like when we talk about the anti-996 movement, people after that, especially after that, they realize they want work-life balance. And there's also been, I've seen a lot more content on Xiaohongshu discussing the importance of health. And people are disclosing that they have certain illnesses, they have certain diseases that they're treating, from the big ones like tumor to hemorrhoid. Actually, people are very open about their hemorrhoid and how they treat it at home. I think it's also part of the
Wow.
health awareness trend. Yeah, the millennial and Gen Z generations
Good for
are
them.
a lot more open about physical health and also mental health. So I think that's a very, very good trend. I think when it comes to specific categories, there are like certain things I feel like only China could have. And before I go into it, I do want to kind of gauge your perception on these two categories first. First of all, Todd, what do you think of pre-made meals? Like, what are
Pre-made
they?
meals. Yeah, so pre-made meals, they come either already prepared and you only need to microwave. The other trend here
Mm,
is having all the ingredients put together with the
yeah.
instructions on how to cook it but you are in control of cooking it. So the pre-made meals where you just microwave, they can be very healthy, sometimes cannot be very healthy, but it's extremely convenient,
Yeah.
great for a busy lifestyle. And quite honestly, with the price of groceries these days, those meals can be a lot cheaper than what you're going to pay, not only at the store, but to go and spend the time to shop and buy them, to bring them home, to store them, and then to take them out and then prepare and then have to do the dishes. You can simply just pay $10, throw it in the microwave, eat it, and then throw away the garbage or recycle the garbage or compost the garbage, and then you're done. So there's a lot of convenience to that. And I think getting the ingredients and more the
Yeah.
box meals, that is also very trendy because you know
Mm.
what went into it. You are the one who put it into it. You can hopefully at least verify whether it
Mm-hmm.
was organic or pesticide free or non-GMO, and you know how much salt and you know how much butter and you know how much oil, and you are fully more in control of exactly how healthy you feel that meal is for your body. So it's gone very well, and it's somewhat hand in hand with the rise of food delivery as well.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Yeah, I see a parallel in the last point too, because some of the first, thank you for the very well-rounded answer. Uh, so with some delivery joints, they will just use pre-meal packages. So there has been some reporting telling their readers, especially the white collar professionals, like do not eat takeout or only eat where the delivery guys eat. Then you know it's not made from like pre-made packages. But what we see is that the way you just described, what I just described, is that there was this 2C business and there's this 2B business. And now, these days, I'm seeing even more extreme versions. So the process you just described, it saves time and energy from buying ingredients to prep to cook to like dealing with aftermath. So what I've seen on Taobao is that there are quite a few D2C pre-made meal brands that they would just package like maybe a pack of noodles in a plastic bag, well in a like well-designed plastic bag, and they add sauces to it. And we have this like really famous, I think, fitness-oriented ingredient, mo yu, I think taro or something, that basically has 0 calories and zero
Mm.
fats. And that's really popular in China. Basically, you can just add, well, it's pre-cooked, noodles are pre-cooked, and then you add your sauces to it and you mix it up, you eat it, and then you can just throw away the packets. You don't have to do any cleanup. Would you call that innovation? I'm not so sure, but I just got myself a box to
Mm.
try this week.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
not
think,
sure about innovation. And another thing
okay.
that's really come on here in the same vein of talking about this is ghost kitchens. Ghost kitchens and
Mm,
investments in ghost kitchens. And ghost kitchens they have no retail presence and they have no real brand. But what they do is prepare the daily the daily meals wrapped freshly made every day, but they're what end up on the shelves of convenience stores, of 7-Eleven, of
mm,
Starbucks, of and it can be sushi, it can be wraps and sandwiches and things like that. Most of what goes out on a day when people come in looking for a quick lunch to a convenience store or to the gas station or whilst getting their coffee.
mm.
The ghost kitchens now are out there. They're produced. They make all of this all these things, and then Starbucks or 7-Eleven or somebody can give them some branded packaging in which to wrap that all in, and then they go, and then they price them when they get there. This kind of things. But ghost kitchens, big on the rise over here.
Mm. That sounds good.
Yeah,
Um,
it's interesting.
yeah, I want to touch base
Now,
on another category. Sorry.
yeah, no, I was
Should
going to
I? Do you
ask
have
about
time for
another
that?
category too. Yeah. There's a
Okay.
couple other,
I don't know if it's okay. So another thing in F&B, food and beverage, is electrolyte water. I was
Mm.
just reading this report from PwC, and I think it's so interesting to look at into the history of consumer culture because back in 2003, when SARS was this pandemic thing going on, electric like what energy drinks were also a hit right after SARS. So what we observed in China is that there was this particular brand, 外星人, like an alien drink developed by Key Forest, 元气森林. They're a big CPG company. Their product basically went viral because everyone who had COVID last year was thinking that I need electrolytes. I need to like kind of refill myself. I need more nutrition in my water. So they just would just get box after box of this electrolyte water. And I think that really gives the whole sector momentum. So yesterday I was writing about this new brand, Electro X. I really, really like the brand because it tastes very good. It's not, well, I think some of the flavorings from old brands are really outdated, but this Chinese brand, Electro X, actually develops flavors according to, I think, like it's popular. Um, Preferences like there's this flavor grapefruit and peppermint and another one jasmine tea and grape which are both my favorite and they're both 0 calorie. They also added L-carnitine in it, which is like something, it's like a amino acid derivative that can turn fatty acids into energy. So I really, really like that. And with the rise of the sports culture and the sports communities, I think the company did really, really well tapping into these niche sports activities from frisbee to cycling to CrossFit, and they are doing really well.
Yeah. Are those on the rise as well, like fitness, gyms, the CrossFit trends, the Peloton, any of that kind of stuff? And also, I'm curious about vitamins and other, supplements like that.
Mm. I don't know so much about vitamins, but what I can say about the fitness world is that I think physical gyms are really struggling because I think after the 3 years of on and off restrictions, people are more used to working out outside. They are also used to meeting people when they work out. They see it kind of as a form of social, kind of
Yeah.
pan. So they would rather like go join a running club, a cycling club, or just to try frisbee on a weekend or pickleball on a weekend instead of going to gyms because gyms are so boring. They still feel isolated at gyms. And also, I think, especially the people in maybe the first tier, second tier cities are joining ClassPass. It's like, yeah, uh, maybe just like gyms for commitment folks. So we're not used to committing to just one gym. We like to try varieties. We like to meet different people when we work out. So yeah, physical gyms and physical yoga studios are really, really suffering because they still have to cover the rent and the human capital of everything. But that's not what people want anymore.
Yeah, it's so when I was in China, I went to some gyms, but I went to some of the bigger names like Bally Fitness, even MOB, which was fairly prevalent there. I think it was an Australian brand. They were not very busy when I was
Mm.
there. And one difference in North America, I think that those that are really focused on working out, they have a goal. They have either like they have a goal of either fat loss, muscle gain, body shape changing. Um, they don't want social. They're actually against being in a social. They don't want to be approached. It's gone from, the hanging headphones to the AirPods to just, I'm putting on my big, Sony speakers.
Mm.
And that's me telling everybody else, don't talk to me. I'm busy, I'm focused, and I'm here for a reason, and it's not to be social. So, but the gyms do just fine over here because that's
Mm.
what a lot of people, they're very serious about it. And not only do people
Mm.
not want to be social who are pretty serious about it, they don't want others being social around them because they don't want the noise and they don't want to be
Yeah,
distracted, and they want to be around other people who are serious about working out as well, and everybody's there to kind of get fit, get in shape, and get the job done.
I see. I see.
Yeah, so a little bit different. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
changing topics. I've been working really hard at the gym also on a lot of facial exercises because I'm really trying to get my face in its beach body shape for my face kini. And so
Oh, yes.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
right, right. So why is that one of the hottest accessories in China this summer? And it's great to ask you about this because you're going to bring me the context. Yes, we know what the face kini is. You put it together. It's a bikini for your face to prevent the sun from making you, dark skin and that or getting tanned or getting skin cancer or what have you. Preferable to a hat, I suppose, because you can swim with it on. Why is it one of the hottest accessories in China this summer?
Right. I've been trying to figure out why as well because I'm definitely not the product target audience. So Fiskini was hot for a while 10 years ago. I think it went viral because Chinese people also thought that was ridiculous when some I think middle-aged woman in Qingdao, which is a coastal city, wore a face skinny on the beach. But this year, I think there are several factors behind this trend. One is that people are going outdoors, and with outdoors, you need to do like the ultraviolet protective factor covering UPF face covers. So that was more of a professional gear. And I think with the golf core trend or like athleisure trend, people like to wear what they wear in the outdoors to the urban setting. So I think the aesthetics is influenced by the outdoor trend. But I think deep down, why do people wear face coverings? It's still the like traditional beauty standards playing its trick. So in China, I mean, historically, we prefer pale skin, which makes me very unpopular when I was growing up because I have darker skin. Um, and that has changed because I've been getting more compliments from Chinese people too, from the older generation. So the traditional beauty standard is one factor. And also, I think one thing I haven't realized until I looked into the comments, is that it's very cost effective compared to putting on sunscreen every day or maybe every hour or so, right? You just have to go out getting that face covering that costs maybe like $15, and you are just sorted for the summer. But I have to say that when I see these people in a subway on the street, they still look ridiculous. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The cost benefit analysis of what is your self respect worth. So maybe it's $15, maybe it's more. Not sure. Let's talk about the rise of coffee and
Mm-hmm.
the parallel rise of cool Chinese tea brands. Now, China's always known for tea,
Mm.
as they should, because the tea is amazing. And there's so many different types and flavors and regions of where it comes from. And you could spend your entire life trying different teas in China. Why? And I don't know if it's even fair to ask you this in the same question, but maybe it is. Why the rise of coffee? And do you have any knowledge or understanding of where that is coming from or what's driving the rise of coffee? And then all of a sudden, there's not just tea, but you've got this quote unquote cool branding where it's on
Mm.
vogue, it's on trend to be drinking these particular tea brands. So, can you tell us a little bit about these two things and maybe touch on, demographics or flavors or how this fits into the young Chinese urban lifestyle?
Right. I think, where do I start? I think when people think of the urban consumer, they think of people in Shanghai and Beijing, but I actually think we need to expand the scope. It's actually people from maybe one, like first tier to even third tier, fourth tier cities. They are basically doing the same thing, that is drinking coffee. I think coffee has been in China forever. I mean, ever since Starbucks entered over 20 years ago, there are now like several waves of specialized coffee trends. And I first lived in Shanghai in 2014 when I think it was the third or fourth wave of specialized coffee coming in. That's when I met the founder of Manner and founder of many other soon to be big coffee brands. Um, but these days, yeah, I think the coffee trend in Shanghai actually surprises me also because Shanghai is now known as the city with the most coffee shops in the world. I mean, according to Meituan. I don't know if there's any prejudices over there, but there are over, I think, 8,000 coffee shops. And the people, I think, because we have such big number, people's perception on the price, on the positioning have changed. If they pay what they used to pay Starbucks, like 30 kwai, maybe like $5 a coffee, they are expecting a lot more. They are expecting the coffee shop to have a perfect setting for them to take pictures or working with a perfectly stable Wi-Fi. But like what we drink these days normally in big cities is 15 kwai Americano. That's half price as what Starbucks cost, and they are just as good. And because we are used to like taking them out and on the street, so we don't really sit in the stores. And that's what I'm drinking now. Actually, I got a takeaway cold tea coffee,
Mm-hmm.
which was founded by the founder of Luckin Coffee, who was kicked out because of financial fraud. He now has his own coffee chain, another coffee chain, Cody Coffee, based on franchise model, which I don't think is a great model. So yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that's a coffee trend. I hope I'm give you a bit of color. But I think
Yeah.
people who like specialized coffee would still pay a lot of attention to the quality. They like to get their own beans from the roasters. For example, I do my own pour over. If I'm like in my Shanghai apartment, I would do my pour over every morning. I get my beans from a specialized roaster. But when I'm out and about, I'll drink my 15 kwai Americano. I just drink a lot of coffee, and I think all of my friends drink a lot of coffee. And
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to tea, I think of course we can talk about the rise of nationalism. I mean, not nationalism, like people are proud of their own culture. Yes, that's one factor. But what I've seen is also an upgrade of the supply chain. I think I went to a trade show in Shanghai a few months ago, and I think the whole supply chain have made it so much easier for small business owners to just do their own branding and to find a space because the big suppliers have thought through the whole plans for you. They even thought about how you can do the copy, how you can do the drink flavors, how you can market yourself. Like as a small business owner, you don't need to think much anymore. So along with the bigger popular tea shops like Hey Tea, Cha Bai Dao, Gu Ming, there are also lots of smaller shops because, yeah, it has become so easy to set up a small business in tea in China.
Yeah. You touched on something there. Meanwhile, I'm dodging these light circles that are coming in because it's the sun is setting over here, and I have like a small
Oh, that's
little
fine.
spot. So I don't know if you can see this in the video for those
Oh,
listening to the
yeah.
podcast. Apologize for this interlude, but I've got these fun little light circles happening on my face on the video. I want to lean in on something you said, which was the nationalism. And I think we've seen success by Chinese consumer brands lazily explained away as simply it's just about nationalism. That's how they're getting the support because they're local.
Mm,
Um, and then they start dismissing the quality of the Chinese brands, given that it can't be, their success can't be based on quality. It's just nationalism at play. That is likely a gross misunderstanding of both
yes.
Chinese consumer preferences and the actual quality that China is able to produce across all sectors. I would like your take on that.
Yeah, I do agree with you that I think not just talking about nationalism is a very lazy explanation. Um, I think I want to take the perfume and candle industry as an example. We've seen the rise of C beauty brands, Chinese beauty brands over the years, and I think after COVID, it's a perfume because people can still use at homes. They can still like please themselves with a scented candle. There have been a lot of like popular Chinese brands from Two Summer to Melt Season and to something called Wenxian. I forgot the English name, but they have such high quality of goods. And yes, they do kind of play into the Chinese like cultural symbols of what a traditional scent may smell like. But what I really see and I'm impressed about is the quality. Because I think since the rise of consumer culture in China, Chinese people have seen a lot. They've seen products from all over the world trying to tap into their wallet. They're not there's Chinese word 糊弄. They can't just be like satisfied with like simple thing just because you're from abroad. In fact, I came across this Italian candle brand the other day, and I was really surprised about how low quality it was, especially coming from Italy
Mm.
compared to Chinese brands. I think with Chinese beauty brands, there's still a long way to go, and a lot of larger companies are investing heavily on research and development because they know they're fully and painfully aware that the Chinese marketers, Chinese brands have almost perfected packaging and marketing because they already know how to do that. I mean the suppliers have been manufacturing for foreign brands for years and years. But what they need to work on is the R&D. I think that's something that Chinese perfume brands have done really, really well. Take Guanxia, Two Summer as an example. I think it's really pretty famous among the CPG world. I think one of the founders is a media person, another one, they have very strong branding background. And what they did a few years ago is that they started DTC first. They started on WeChat mini program, and they would drop some products every Thursday. Some people may call it hunger marketing, but to them, it's also a way to stop people from overbuying because they only have limited supplying power. So it got popular back then, and leveraging on that initial success, they opened some offline stores, which were also popular. When you walk in, you just feel like you've walked into an artist's home or an art gallery. I think the sense there it was like multi-sensory experience, and for the initial customers who were introduced to Summer on WeChat, they can now have the full brand experience, which prolongs their success, and they are still seen as one of the most like successful case studies in Chinese perfume.
Okay. Um, I honestly believe that I could talk to you all day. I love what you are bringing to the podcast right now. I love the context. I love that you're very open about your own opinion and your thoughts, but it is well versed in data and research and understanding, and it's well thought out. And of course, you have both sides of the ocean backgrounds to draw upon to make some of those conclusions. So I really, really appreciate that. One final question from me for this show, for this episode for now, is just simply, what are some fascinating to you or
Mm.
to others cultural trends that you're keeping your eye on right now?
Mm. I think when it comes to that, what really interests me these days is how Chinese consumers would continue to spend in an economic downturn. What would they actually spend money on? Is it value? Does it have to be super cheap? Are they actually downgrading their consumption preferences? That's something I'm actually like asking every consumer I talk to. And hopefully there can be like some data coming out from my end in the long run. Maybe I'll do like a solid report in the long run. But I think that's something I'm looking at, and maybe the agencies and brands should also be looking at, because they may need to find a new positioning in the post-COVID China. For example, just a very quick example, I recently wrote about budget hotels taking another rise in China, but they are high in demand now, especially in summer because people are traveling, people are going on business trips. But they are becoming super expensive because there are not enough of them, because the business makers, big corporations, when they were making decisions a few years ago, pre-COVID, they didn't foresee that people would go back to budget hotels. They would assume that Chinese consumers are trading up. They are going through the phase of consumption upgrades. Therefore, we are developing more mid-level hotel options. So now,
What's
after COVID, they may need to like rewind. Sorry?
I was just going to ask, what do you think the drivers are that is driving the interest and the consumption for mid-level? Is it
Mm,
are the upper levels saving money and coming down a step? Are people who are at
right.
the lower level wanting to spend more and come up a step? I'm curious.
I think when it comes to mid-level, I think it's the middle class that are trying to save. I think people from working class, they are also trying to save, and people who are earning a lot, the high net worth individuals, they are not really hit by the economic downturn because they don't need
Mm,
salaries to, I don't know, make ends meet. It's the mid-level people who are maybe previously working for big tech companies, working for internet sector, uh, FMCG brands. They are feeling the hit. So they are trying to get more value out of their consumption. So maybe when they go traveling, they want to look at the budget options instead of the yeah, the middle level options. And also
mm.
when it comes to dining out, they are maybe looking at the pizza places that can fill them up, instead of going out for a really expensive meal.
Okay. I
Yeah,
have
and I
one
think
more
just
question.
to yeah.
Okay, no, I want you to finish your thought before I ask that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think what I say could be like a good wrap up too. Basically, I think um, in this in this global economic downturn, a lot of consumer behaviors are similar. So when it comes to entering China or China marketing, brands shouldn't be disencouraged just because they think China is a different world, and these days China is more and more portrayed as a black box. They shouldn't be scared about the cultural differences and language barriers. I think there can be a lot of similarities between different consumer markets. So I think for the companies that are looking at China now, they should try things small and easier way up. And yeah, I would still encourage brands to come in because people are still looking for variations and options.
Agreed. I think there are more savvy shoppers.
Mm-hmm.
I know that myself, personally, I'm interested in real estate, and our family owns a few properties, both in this province and a couple provinces over. Interest rates are through the roof. Well, they're higher than they've been in 30 years or more. And to me, that's a perfect opportunity to buy.
Mm.
It's a little bit of the Warren Buffett style of when everybody goes right, I go left, so to speak. I think that right now the market is really, really cooling off, which is the intention of taking interest rates up, is to cool off the market, which is a perfect opportunity to buy because you will get things with less competition. You'll get the deals faster. You'll pay less. And even though the cost of borrowing is higher, all of those other factors combined will probably land you in a better position in a couple of years when you refinance that mortgage at a lower interest rate anyway. You will have already saved via the other things that I just mentioned. So don't be thrown off by one single thing or one single data point or economic data point. You have to understand that there's an opportunity there. Right now, it's really, really hard to hire really good people. Great. That just means if I work harder and hustle a little bit more and I'm better at interviewing and networking to find the good people, that gives my business an advantage because everybody else isn't going to find the same level of people or the quality people that I have. My business should prosper. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at that. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
touch on one more thing though, and you
Yeah.
kind of led me to it, if you don't mind, when you were talking about the hotels. And I know that in North America, as I run an Airbnb as well, I've got a cute little
Oh.
log house, 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom, and it does very, very well. We put a lot of work into local experiences. We have locally sourced soaps and shampoos and all kinds of things like this in there, and people are looking for that experiential getaway. So they're not going to the hotels as much anymore. They like the Airbnbs. They like going off the beaten path to go to a treehouse and that is got a bed and maybe some running water in it, or yurts, which are those tents that are the big canvas tents that look like a circus pop-up tent, the main tent, but in a small factor that's off in the woods somewhere. Just really unique, experiential, differentiated, off the beaten path type of things. Even the motels are coming back that are all getting refreshed and redesigned. It's all about the experience that people can get. And is that experience Instagrammable or TikTokable or things like this? I'm wondering if you're seeing any of that kind of trend in China.
Hmm. I think I'm not sure about people wanting to get experiences because Airbnb is shut.
Mm.
It has left China last summer, and they are Chinese equivalents, of course. But I think the middle class people still want Airbnbs, and it was actually very popular for a few years, and they did some local programs too. I really don't think the Chinese platforms can match that up. But when it comes to budget hotels, the big hotel groups also did an internal upgrading when it comes to the decoration, and they refurbish the whole thing so that people don't feel like they're staying in a budget hotel. So in a way, the hotel chains really traded up for the customers because we still want more. But when it comes to experiences, maybe they can just discover it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we can, for example, my friends and I are actually planning a trip to, I think southern Sichuan, a wine tour, and we are gonna organize it by ourselves. We're not gonna pay to any agencies to do that. So maybe people, if they want the experience, they can just rely on themselves. And actually, there are a lot of boutique hotel agencies, or I mean, a boutique B&B style agencies on Xiaohongshu that people can find. They tend to trust Xiaohongshu more than anything else. So maybe Airbnb is long gone, but it gives room and space to breathe to smaller players.
Right. Yes, I do remember as I was leaving China that boutique hotels were becoming quite fashionable and obviously very Instagrammable, as most things
Mm.
designed these days are. Yaling Jiang, founder of Following the Yuan newsletter, thank you very, very much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you for your time as well. Have a great conversation.
All right. For those of you listening to the podcast, don't forget we have the YouTube of this entire conversation over on the WPIC YouTube channel. And for those of you watching us on video, if you need to suddenly switch to audio only, we do have the podcast. It is on all the podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. But for me and for Yaling and for everybody at the negotiation, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.